I'm here to talk to you from America. So I bet I've come farther than most of you to get here, but I heard somebody's here from Brazil, so I think they win. Are you here? Raise your hand. This is my first time in Morocco, but it is actually not my first time in Africa. I have, as many of you, been an entrepreneur for a long time. I think I started my first business when I was 8 years old. But back in 2004, my husband and I decided we were going to start a business. And it all started when we found the Turkish goulet. Now, this is familiar to many of you that live in the Mediterranean because this boat is all over the place. But in America, we never see them. However, our business was founded, or the idea was founded, that this was the perfect type of boat because it's sustainable, because it's a sailboat, it's made of wood, which doesn't take much effort to kill. The type of trees that are used to make this boat grow very quickly. So it's quite a sustainable type of boat, and they've been using them for thousands of years in this area. So we found that it would be a very useful boat to use if we were going for a niche market, the tech traveler who cares about sustainability and luxury travel. Now, if you care about creating the next important startup, you want to make sure you get your demographic right. And we had it. We'd worked for 4 years on this startup. We had investors and advisors lined up. And we came over to Africa, actually Mauritius, to work with the government there to get everything working. And then this happened. In 2007, the economy took a downturn. No one was spending money on luxury travel anymore. And President Obama he said this, which sunk our business instantly before we even started. The result of that, worldwide, was that the market for luxury spending everywhere went down. One careless sentence by a world leader killed an entire niche for everyone. This is extremely important to know because when you start a business, even if every indicator is up, even if you have everything going for you, then something out of your control can change it. Thankfully, somewhere around August of 2007, we'd started to notice that things were going a little crazy. And we made the decision in October to get out. Before we sunk too much money in, that was about when we had to decide whether we were going to buy our first set of boats or not. Before we had to sign those contracts with the government, we decided to quit the business. And that's really important, because if you don't go forward with a business, if you fail fast, that's sometimes more important than going forward. Because 97% of businesses fail within the first 10 years. So the idea is to be one of those 3% that hits. And actually, only 1 in 617 businesses has the potential to become a billion-dollar valuation company out of the tech companies. So in the last 5 years, there's been 60,000 new tech companies created. So if your business is going to be one that isn't going to be a billion-dollar company and that's what you want, then you better quit it fast and start another one. So who am I? Well, as I said, I am from the United States. I actually live in Las Vegas. Who here has ever been to Las Vegas? It's a pretty cool place if you get off the Strip. It's pretty cool if you're on the Strip, too. But I happen to live off of the Strip, and yes, there actually is something beyond it. I was an early employee at Evernote. Anyone here use Evernote? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That was actually the 16th unicorn company, back when unicorns weren't happening every single day. And it was a huge deal at the time. It's still a huge deal, but when this happened, we were like, wow, we're an elephant unicorn. So that was pretty cool. And because of that, I get called the unicorn whisperer. What does that mean? I actually work with businesses to help them focus their idea to make sure that the strategy that they're using becomes something that can succeed, whether it's a billion-dollar business or just a sustainable one. Because I actually prefer the ideas that are sustainable, ones that can give back to the community, rather than people that are just chasing a valuation. I also am very proud that I just won Mentor Coach of the Year. That's a worldwide thing, so that's pretty cool, and Female Executive of the Year, so that's also pretty cool. Thank you. And I do advise and mentor companies worldwide. So I work with people, just with any startup. My day is 24 hours a day, working with people around the clock. And it's great because I get to see all the new trends, all the different industries, and I pretty much run the gamut, so I really love what I do. So what is a unicorn? Because, I mean, you're all here because you're interested in unicorns. Well, a unicorn is a startup, specifically in the tech industry, that's been given a $1 billion valuation or more. Who gives those valuations? There's actually a group of people independently that value these companies. And it can be private or public investment. But it has to be companies that have been founded within a certain time period as well. So while Apple and Google and Facebook are obviously worth more than $1 billion, they don't count as unicorns because they haven't been funded since the year 2000. What makes a unicorn, in addition to the $1 billion? The idea has to be simple. It has to be something that when you hear about it, you're like, I could have thought of that. How many times have you been like, oh, I could have thought of Uber? Or I always was sleeping on my friend's couch, and now somebody's making $1 billion on Airbnb? It's always something so simple that everyone gets it right away. That's the first hallmark. Next, it solves an existing problem that everyone has. My company with the boats would not have been a $1 billion company because it was a very, very niche market. Airbnb, however, solves a large problem that everyone has. It's travel. It's a problem when you go to a new place. How do I find a hotel room? What if it's sold out? Everywhere, when you're traveling, you need to know that you can find something. So if you can open up an app that works every place you go, and it always gives you room availability, that is a mass market problem. If it has an obvious value to people that you don't, again, this goes back to being simple. If you can just in 2 words explain why something is needed, then it's super important. So for Uber, people are very tired of using taxis. You have to stand out there, you have to hail a cab, it may not come, trying to call one in the middle of the night. Women are scared to try and get into a cab with someone they don't know. There's so many different things that Uber hits. And when you just open up the app and some car comes to you, or Kareem here, same type of thing, it comes to you and it just works. This is the hallmark of a unicorn company. Clear market differentiation. Evernote. When Evernote was introduced, all we heard over and over again was, what about OneNote? Everyone already had OneNote installed on their machines by default with Microsoft Office. I know there's some Microsoft people here, and they're like, yeah, well, we have OneNote. Well, what was different about Evernote was it worked on every single platform. There was clear differentiation in that it was used for search and available multi-platform. There's still no one that competes with Evernote on the multi-platform differentiation. So that is where Evernote can be the leader. And again, having something that is online, an online service like Airbnb, like Uber, like Evernote, Slack, all of these companies have a platform that's deliverable online. If you look at all of the billion-dollar companies, they all are driven by the cloud in some way, even the consumer electronics companies. There's something about them that has a platform that's mass market. And they're beautiful. The user experience has to be great. Why is that? Think about this. You will only use something that is as good or better than the best experience you've had previously. Because now that you know how good something can be, you won't tolerate anything less, at least not for long, because it'll give somebody the opportunity to come along and beat you. So, for example, everyone was okay with phones being clunky until the iPhone came out. And now Apple has to struggle to keep up with Samsung after many years, because Samsung's putting out wonderful phones now. I mean, it took a while for Android to catch up, but now it's a great experience, and people are tired of rebooting their iPhones. So, come on, Apple. The founders have to have a clear vision that they communicate. How many of you here work for a startup where they started working for that startup because the founder was just amazing? Yeah. How many are that founder that's amazing? Awesome. I saw some women raise their hands too. It is imperative that the founders of a startup have that vision, because with the passion drives the communication and the company, and people will just keep working forever to drive that forward. Plus, with the clear vision, it comes through to the customers. And that passion that your employees feel, your customers will feel it too, and it's contagious. And if you have that contagious passion, then you have a unicorn. But you can have all of those things, and if you're too early or too late to the market, then you failed. Because if you release something that is dependent on something else, for example, like there's so many apps out there right now and technologies that are dependent on the Oculus, but the Oculus is still delayed. Now, how many people are going to wait around for the apps and the technologies that the Oculus is going to go? Because they're going to wait until the price goes down, and by then those companies are out of business. This is something that you need to take care of and watch. You can't depend on other people. You have to be just in time. And that's what just in time means. If you're too late, then somebody else has beaten you. If you're too early, then you're going to run out of money before you get there. There are 142 companies worldwide with $1 billion valuations. I'm sure there's some of them up there that you didn't even realize. They're all around the world, and it just keeps getting more crowded. Some of those were just added last week. They run the gamut of consumer electronics, customer services, enterprise, travel and hospitality. There's 7% of those are actually game companies. But what's most interesting is that there's for example, the earliest ones are actually government service provider. Palantir is one of the largest ones, and it's huge. It's a government service. So, and then we have SpaceX, which hasn't even released anything, and it's right there. The value of all of these together, though, is still less than Apple. It's between Google and Apple, about $500 billion. So even though there's 142 unicorns, they're still worth less than one Apple. So that puts things in perspective. And here's where they are. There's 2 in the Middle East. There's 32 in Asia now, and 1 in South America. That's in Argentina, by the way, not in Brazil. Sorry about that. But, I'm sure it's not surprising to know that 92 of them are in the United States. But there aren't yet any in Africa. So when will the next one come from Africa? Why do you think there aren't any here? Is it the valuations? Is it the dollar? Or is it the type of community that you have here? The culture of a startup is quite different.
I think one reason is that the venture capitalists come from the US.
It could be, but there are a lot of venture capitalists in Germany and the UK, and they're the ones that are investing in the United Kingdom and in Asia. So, come on. Oh no. So this slide is a little screwed up for some reason, but what it's trying to say is what is in common with startups in the Unicorn Club. So the founders, generally, of these unicorns have in common that they went to school together, they have started other companies, they have technical degrees, they were in their 30s or older when they started. So any of you under 30, keep trying, keep going. And they're male. There's only 2 startups in those 142 that have women CEOs, and only 5% of them even have female founders. So that's very telling, because it's across the board. Even in the ones that are just being founded right now, or just being entered into the Unicorn Club, there aren't women. They're not on the boards, they're not founders, and they're not CEOs. So, sorry that this is getting screwed up, but so culture is something that happens with startups. In a startup culture, you end up with a flat hierarchy, which is something that defines the management cycle. So you'll find that people, especially in the early part of a startup, will report directly to the upper management team, which is difficult when it starts to get larger, because suddenly the people will be like, how do I report to my manager? How do I get things done? And that's why you'll find people turning over as things scale, because a startup person is not a manager generally. A startup person is somebody that gets stuff done. They're an engineer, they're a generalist, they do stuff. And then when it turns into a company later, when it turns into a Facebook or a Google or an Apple, you get corporate people. I love this quote because it is absolutely true. When you're in a startup, especially the unicorns, it's a roller coaster ride. One day, everything is going great, but you know the next day it's going to fail. Something is going to go wrong, and it's going to sink the company. You're always sure of it. And if you're not sure of it, then you're doing something wrong. You have to live in constant fear that you're going to go out of business. And it's terrifying. Can you imagine what that's like to be that way for the 7 years on average that it takes for a startup to go from zero to IPO? Because that's what it takes. This is something that a lot of people, when they see, it's like a gut punch. They don't realize exactly how much they're working. They'll say, oh, I work 80-hour weeks. But then they don't realize that what that means. If you are working an average of 80 hours a week, in the United States, in San Francisco, the average salary is $125,000 a year. Now, the cost of living in San Francisco is roughly $200,000 a year, so that's off already. But $127,000 a year at 84 hours a week comes out to roughly $29 an hour. Now, I know here that's probably quite a lot of money. There, that doesn't even pay for dinner. If you are struggling to get things done, you don't even have time for your family. You're doing this for 7 years, on average, until the IPO, if you go IPO for a unicorn. This is what is required of every one of those companies in the Unicorn Club. This is what's required of any startup that's starting out. And I'm sure some of you here realize this, that you're doing this and you're not even paying attention. Your office could be a coffee shop. It could be your house. But you're doing this and not even realizing it. I don't know why these slides aren't working. But, so Evernote actually offers perks towards their companies, towards housekeeping services, to keep the employees happy while they're at work so they don't have to go home and clean their houses. Facebook pays their employees $20,000 for the female employees for egg freezing so they can put off having children until later, to keep them at work so they don't have to go home and have children. There are things that are happening to feed a cult of productivity, to keep you working 84 hours a week on average. If you want to be in the Unicorn Club, that's what it takes. You do not get a work-life balance. That is not for you if you want to be in the Unicorn Club. You don't get to have a family. At least, they don't get to have you. You can say hi from the computer while you're away on a business trip. You can instant message. Or you can try to have a life until they oust you for being not a team player. This is what the culture is like. I myself, after 6 years at Evernote, ended up with cancer. I didn't even realize it. I'd been ignoring the signs for 2 years until my best friend noticed that I'd lost 35 pounds. And everyone at the office had just been like, oh, you look great. You've lost weight. It's wonderful. My best friend was like, you need to go to the doctor. So I did, and thankfully, I was fine. I mean, they got it out, and then I was fine. But then I was back at work literally that afternoon after the surgery, because that is the cult of unicorns. I think somebody else just has had a similar situation in the audience. So people burn out, and 12% of the startups that have been known to fail recently have had burnout as the reason that they failed. It wasn't running out of money. It wasn't team problems. It was burnout, because people, if you keep going for 84 hours a week at minimum, you're going to burn out. Your body's not meant for it. But that's what it takes to be a unicorn. So you keep doing it. So I ask you, would you rather chase that unicorn valuation, or take a break, ride on it, be an employee of Apple or Facebook or Google or a normal sane company where you can be a person that comes home to their family, that has a life? Because these unicorns do not allow you to do that. If you want to be an entrepreneur, there are healthy ways to do it. You can start a business. You can work your family into it. But the culture of Silicon Valley and the unicorns that they create does not allow for that. So this is actually great. This is from the Airbnb founder, because it is true. You do have to start and fail and start and fail until you hit. But it's also very damning, because how many times do you have to do that? How many days are you working until your body can't handle it anymore? My words for you are to focus on building something meaningful, but don't worry about the billion-dollar valuation. Be very careful about where you're spending your time. Build the community. Give back. Care about your families. And pay attention to yourselves. If you're tired, go to sleep. If you're hungry, eat something. And listen to your friends, because they're good indicators of something being wrong with you. And usually that something wrong with you is that you're talking all about your business all the time and not about anything else. It's something that a lot of startup founders fall into the trap of. They think they're super passionate because they're only talking about their business when it becomes the only thing they have. So make sure that you have more than just your business as well to stay healthy. Because the unicorn club does not allow for that. But healthy, sustainable businesses do. And that's why, actually, I think that Africa does not currently have any unicorn companies, because I think that here they focus on community. I think here it's very telling that there's 26% females at this conference, because there's such a culture of support and such a culture of community and togetherness that we can make a difference here and make sure that when there finally is a billion-dollar company, it'll be done the right way.